Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bacon Bits podcast. As you can tell, this is not John Bacon. Today we have our amazing producer,
Shay,
and me, his lovely wife, otherwise known as AKA his habanero sugar. And we're going to talk today with you about accessibility in an inaccessible world. But as always, the podcast is still going to have valuable information. Applied equals success. So as my wonderful husband loves to say, I want to hear you say it back. Okay, Shay, let's go. Valuable.
Okay. Valuable.
Information. Applied equals success.
I was going to say it in Spanish, but I forgot all the words you say.
I don't even know how to translate that in Spanish.
Aplicada, that's all I remember.
Información que tiene valor aplicado sale a success. I forgot the word.
Okay.
Anyway.
Muy bien.
Yeah, muy bien. Muchas gracias. So today we're going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to both of our hearts. It's not a place neither one of us wanted to be in. It's part of the club that nobody wants to be part of. Either I'm going to be talking about from the disabled perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to talk about the caregiver perspective. This was supposed to be John's part, but he is currently being a superhero. And so I'm taking over because my mom also had brain surgery about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And so it's nice to hear it from someone else's perspective. I think we got John's perspective a couple of times on different episodes of what it's like to be a caregiver, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, for sure. And my husband is being a superhero as always. He's helping somebody in crisis right now, and he stepped away. So guess what we did? We're applying valuable information we know.
We hijacked this plane.
We're gonna go ahead and do amazing. So first, we're going to talk about a little bit of what is disability, right? So the ADA defines a person with a disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So the ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in several areas. So this includes employment, transportation, public accommodations, and access to like state or local government programs or services. So although that the ADA is set in place, I want to say it was like in the 80s. I don't quite remember. It was like 86
a while
or something.
ago.
Yeah, which is an amazing thing that is in place. It's necessary, but the reality is it's not perfect, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of places that, especially older buildings, that doesn't have ADA.
Yeah.
There's places that are absolutely inaccessible. I know that my husband and I, we went out to eat just a couple of days ago with my precious grandbabies, and there was a lady in a wheelchair that was a bariatric wheelchair. It was an electric wheelchair, but there's no way she could have fit through the bathroom. Even an ADA restroom would not have allowed her wheelchair to get in, and I felt so sad because I have some barriers that I have to deal with, but I couldn't imagine what she was having to deal with. I mean, it took them a while to get seated because there was about 5 or 6 people who were disabled at her table, and it was just, it shouldn't have been so hard, but I'm glad they accommodated her.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's about 4 different types of disabilities. I'm sure there's a lot more, but 4 off the top of my head. Here, there's 4 different types. There's intellectual disabilities, there's physical disabilities, sensory disabilities, and mental illness. So this includes even if you've ever had a history of it. And also it's called WHO, the World Health Organization, talks about barriers. So there's ADA laws that is technically it's discriminating against people who are in those areas that can't get to the assistance that we need.
Yeah, or not offering, disabled friendly options. Like Correct. If you go to a bar, which I don't think anybody would be at a bar, but you'd have to have something that's wheelchair friendly or wheelchair height.
Well, yeah,
because no one's going to get out and sit on a freaking bar stool.
No, absolutely not. Like, there's no way. That's
Yeah.
like a nightmare, right? But
Yeah.
people do go to bars. And what if you want to go to a sports bar? You have to go watch a movie. You don't have cable. Most likely, you're going to go to a sports bar.
Exactly.
I went to a restaurant once. There was one downtown, and it was, what's it called? El Chato. Amazing restaurant. I loved it. My daughter wanted to go to this one restaurant, and it was her favorite one downtown. But it was inaccessible. It had stairs up and stairs down to get in. There were steps, but they were so amazing. And I'm really, really fortunate and very blessed that I'm able to stand a little bit. But that was a really hard day for me. I wasn't able to. 4 of their servers came down. People came out, and they, like, some of their employees, like people even who were just sitting there eating, all of a sudden everyone just, they saw me, they got up, they started moving tables. 4 people came and they carried me in my chair. But you know what? That's not going to happen for everybody.
Right.
And sometimes it's, if it was John in a chair, that was impossible. They're not going to be able to pick a 6'4",
giant.
220-pound man in a wheelchair who the chair alone might weigh 200 pounds. There's no way that's going to happen for people, but that doesn't always happen. And who the World Health Organization describes barriers as being more than just physical obstacles. And I think this is really, really important, because I know for me, this has been a huge deal.
Us too, yeah, for sure. And we find it more difficult now after, like, post-surgery to go out and do things, because the atmosphere itself creates a less than favorable, like, experience for her, where she'll go into seizures. Like, if it's too overwhelming, too noisy, like she can't focus, she'll immediately just have a seizure. So we just found, like, eating in is better for us than going out. And we have to really plan going to the movies, because, like, you know, she loves going to the movies, and we have to really plan how many people are going to be in the theater, like at what time. It's a lot. There's a lot that goes into us just doing normal things that most people are just like, want to go to the movies? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. Yeah. It's not a drop of the hat for us. Yeah. It's definitely a planning.
Yeah. And we just went to watch a movie yesterday, and it was so good. It was called The Jesus Revolution. I highly recommend it. I love the whole hippie movement, but it was just a really great movie. And we were really fortunate because we went in the middle of the day. So it was the afternoon. So the first thing that I didn't like, talking about accessibility, it was accessible. There was ramps and it was accessible, but as soon as you pull in, as soon as you walk up or down the ramp, whatever that is, up or down, that's where you had to sit. That's where the accessible part was. You couldn't get farther away from the screen. So number one, way too close to the screen. It was very overstimulating. Whenever I go into public places, I always have little foam earplugs plus my noise canceling headphones on top of that. But I didn't have sunglasses. I don't have sunglasses. And it was too, like, many times throughout the movie, I just had to close my eyes, and not just close them, but cover my eyes with something, because even the light gets through. Yeah. So, that's something. That's a deal, right? So we're going to talk about that. What are some ways that we can prepare, right? And even after we prepare, we still have to make a plan for if that plan doesn't work of preparing. So we're going to talk about some environmental factors. So let's talk about, okay, first of all, what is the WHO's definition of a barrier, right? So factors in a person's environment that through their absence or presence limit functioning and create a disability. So some of these include a physical environment that is not accessible, staircases, things that, oh my gosh, I've seen so many places that, God bless them, they have tried to make it accessible by putting a ramp, but the incline is like
insane.
It's like 30-degree or 40-degree incline that like even walking, you're going to get shin splints. It's like so high, and there's no way. And there's no, like, what do you call those things on the side? The guardrails. Yeah. There's nothing to hold on to help pull you. Yeah. And I've had to pull myself and do that. It's like impossible. So unless someone pushes you.
I do not want to work out before trying to enjoy myself.
But unless someone's like physically there to hold you, like you're going to come flying down. Yeah. Or you're going to go flying back or flip back. There's just absolutely no way. There's no way. So a physical environment that is just simply not accessible, staircases, ramps that are just too steep or too narrow. Yeah. My wheelchair is pretty small. My frame is 5 feet. I'm like 140, but my wheelchair is 16 inches, my seat. So together it may be like 19 inches wide. And there's some places I don't fit.
Yeah.
It's not very wide. Let's be reasonable here.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was pregnant, I wouldn't fit. An able-bodied pregnant person wouldn't fit through there.
Yeah.
A lack of a relative assistance or adaptive devices. So like we just talked, like a handrail, something that could help us pull ourselves up, or even just balancing people with balance problems, right? The next one's a pretty big one, right? I know that.
Negative attitudes, yeah.
Negative attitudes.
Yeah.
Wow. I think this is a hard one because I have friends who are disabled. I have friends who are amputees, and just they just can't. They have concluded that they're just going to stay home because the stares or the comments or some of the ways that people perceive them or even say mean things to them. I just,
it honestly sucks. Like how we see it is like people feel like it's an inconvenience to them, but you don't realize how much of an inconvenience it is for the disabled person themselves. Yeah. Like having to get out and having to do that, and then having to find a way to help your own self, like without asking for help, because again, you don't want to be an inconvenience to somebody. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then for people to just treat you like, like, you know, and you're like, can I get help with this? Like that. I hate that. I hate people do that. That is like the most annoying thing. And me being the very loud daughter, firstborn that I am, like I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to people that are just being rude to her. So I'm like, you know, a couple years ago, she wouldn't have asked you for help. Like she would have just did this by herself. Now, like, you can show some compassion. Like you don't know what someone's going through or what they've been through, like the journey that they're on. Like your like sound effects are not helping at all. Yeah. They already feel embarrassed that they have to even ask for help.
Yeah. And the reality is a lot of us won't.
Yeah.
Because we have to just hype ourselves up just to get out the door. First of all, what are we going to wear that is quickly removable so we can use the restroom as an emergency, or sometimes, you know, preventing an accident, or being comfortable in a wheelchair, or using a device that's accessible when you go places, like whether it be a wheelchair or a walker or a rollator. Like people think it's only 3 stairs. You can do that, right? You know, I've had people look at me and say, are you going to get out of your wheelchair? And just like, I'm faking something, and without understanding. And you can't teach compassion. You know, I love it if you could, but people just, not everyone is kind and considerate and compassionate. And the reality is there's a lot of systems or policies that are non-existent. Yeah. And sometimes actually hinder people with disabilities from even being involved in social places. And we'd love to. There's a lot of places I would love to go. And I simply cannot. It has been 5 years and I have yet to go into like a large, like even my home church, because the music is too loud. It's too overstimulating for me. Still, 5 years, I just cannot do it. Yeah. And I don't know if I will ever get to a place when I can without stepping out, because I have the fear of offending someone if I get up and walk out.
Yeah. I think my mom is blessed to have some of the sons and daughters that she has, because like I said, we're pretty vocal. For her 50th birthday, what was it, last year I think, or the year before, we went to Disney. Wow. And that was probably not a good idea because it was very overstimulating for her, but just the group that she had, it was me and my sister, my brother, and then my brother-in-law, and that group that she had, like we were pretty protective of her. So like she didn't want to be in a wheelchair because she didn't want to be an inconvenience to them. She couldn't bring her own wheelchair because it didn't meet their standards. So then they allow you to rent theirs. But then again, she's like, I don't want to be in a wheelchair. So we ended up with a walker, and just trying to get from ride to ride. Like she was getting overwhelmed and she was getting slower throughout the day. Like you can tell she was slowing down significantly. And just us, her little bodyguards, were like, give her some room, like back it up. Because everyone's always in a rush. And I'm just like, let this girl walk. But yeah, you have to be a voice. If you're a caregiver, if you're a family member with a person with disabilities, you have to be a voice for them, because they don't want to be embarrassing. They don't want to be an annoyance. They don't want to be that, like, you have to be their voice.
Yeah.
So instead of them getting trampled, you got to be like, can you back up, please? Yeah. 6 feet. We're in the middle of a pandemic still. Well,
God bless you. And my daughter's pretty vocal when she's around me, but you know, she's working, and it's John who's 99% of the time with me.
Yeah.
I'm almost never able to go anywhere by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be my own advocate. Not everybody has the luxury and the fortune to have somebody with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just another reality. And they're not trying to be introverts. They're not trying to be isolating.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to isolate, but they have no choice, because it's hard to be your own advocate. It's hard to speak up
mm-hmm.
over things that happen when you don't have the ability. In the middle of having an overstimulating moment, I have ataxia due to that. Like your mom can have a seizure,
mm-hmm.
and ataxia could look like a seizure, and when I just don't have the ability to speak at that moment, and people are like, what's wrong? And I start crying because I'm overstimulated, and my
mm-hmm.
body's just reacting, and they think something happened, and then they're overwhelming me, and they mean well.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's number one reason why I can't go anywhere by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. So let's get back to some of these.
We're getting off topic. I'm sorry.
No, we're not getting off topic, because that goes right into one of the barriers that the WHO was talking about, right? So a lot of people, they're completely oblivious. They're just completely unaware of some of the difficulties that people with disabilities have to take,
mm-hmm.
and how sometimes it's impossible for us to even participate in daily life, just
mm-hmm.
basic daily activities. A stereotyping people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people with disabilities are stereotyped. They're assuming that our quality of life is either unhealthy or is poor because of our disabilities,
mm-hmm.
or they have some sort of stigma, like we're lazy, or we have bought it on ourselves, or
mm-hmm.
if we ate something different, well, damn it, Shay, if I just ate some more kale and kiwis, I would have prevented this brain tumor if I wasn't doing, maybe I'm just being punished.
Which is idiotic in itself to have those thoughts.
But that's the reality.
It is.
People see disability as a tragedy,
mm-hmm.
or something that needs to be cured,
mm-hmm.
prevented, and the reality is just deal with the fact that we're being punished for doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I had a lot of Job's friends come see me, and it's hard. And I say Job's friends of people who are in the faith. They know about the book of Job, and people came to see Job and said, well, you must have some secret sin. You must have some secret sin in you that mm-hmm. is causing this. Go ahead and confess it, and then God will forgive you. And man, stop assuming people are being punished.
Yeah.
Life happens, and life is hard, and sometimes life takes your breath away.
And I think one of the things that my mom has gotten to learn over the last couple of years too is because she had that mindset, and sometimes she still does. Like sometimes she'll cry and she'll be like, what did I do to deserve this? Like what in my life did I do wrong to deserve this? And I'm like, you know what, maybe you're going through this to help somebody.
Yeah.
And just like you're now reaching so many people through this podcast alone discussing this topic. I think that it's a blessing. Not only is it a curse, but it is a blessing, because you're going to be able to help somebody else that's been maybe in it for a lot longer or just newly into it, and you're going to be able to help them through it. And that's what I try to remind my mom a lot is, don't look at it as a curse. Look at it as you're blessing somebody. You're going to be able to help somebody through this because you've walked through this.
Yeah. I know when I ask myself, I love asking questions to people. I love playing the question game. Like
mm-hmm.
I'm never the one who gets offended. Like, go ahead, let's play 150 questions. And I love learning about people, and I love learning about myself in the process. And one of the questions I remember asking was, what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, and how has it changed you?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the best thing that's happened to you, and how has it changed you? And my answer for both was the brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
My answer, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to stomach, but the reality is getting to a place in my life where it didn't happen to me, but it happened for me. Like you and your family being able to go to Disney, like, wow, like, would that have happened? Or would you guys have been living your life in different lanes? You know, I was running and living just too fast, doing it all for God and doing ministry and doing a lot of things. But the reality was I had way more on my plate than I should have.
Yeah. Sometimes God is really telling you, sit down, take a break, sit down, take a break. And then finally he's like, sit down. Let me help you sit down. Yeah. And you gotta listen. You gotta listen.
Psalms 23 says he will make you lie beside still waters. I don't want him to make me anymore. I want to just know, hey, sit your tail down somewhere and just be. Just be with me, right? Just rest. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So another barrier, it's communication barriers. That's a big one. That's a real big one. I know for me, if I'm starting to become overstimulated or forgot my headphones, or there's too much light or too much flashing, like at night, it's really hard. And being in a vehicle is really, really hard for me. I never had anxiety before, but oh my gosh, when someone's driving and they can be the best driver in the world, my nail marks are in the car, my eyes are closed. It feels like we're getting hit every single time. It feels like cars are coming at us. I'm just really overwhelmed and overstimulated. The movement of the vehicle alone is a lot for me. So it takes a lot for me to get in a car, and I don't think people recognize that for people. Like, it takes a lot for them to get to you in general. That's why I have a sweet, precious friend of mine that comes to visit me, and she always comes to see me. I don't have to go into Vantran or anything, but communication barriers can be like people who use small print rather than big, large letters, because we have vision problems. People with brain injuries also, a lot of us have vision problems. People who have vision impairment, like no Braille versions, or even people who can read on the screen because maybe they can't even hear it, like an auditory messaging, like when you go to doctor's offices, even basic things like that. Like maybe I can't read it, but maybe I can hear it. But if I'm hearing impaired, I need to see it. And if I'm seeing impaired, I need to hear it. And that doesn't even exist in something as important as a doctor's office. Yeah. You don't get all of that stuff. Yeah. Videos. I know that we have like a TikTok. Like we play on TikTok. I like TikTok. It's fun. Yeah. But I'm less likely to look at a TikTok or an Instagram or a Facebook video or even on YouTube without reading. Even when we watch movies, I need to see it because I don't always hear everything, or I don't pick up the things they're saying, or a lot of times it's just too loud. Yeah. It's so overstimulating. We'll have to lower the volume, and I just have to read it and pause it so I can see all of it. And things with even ASL, like, we need American Sign Language. Sometimes going to a church service, sometimes going to a concert, going to any place. We don't realize communication barriers are a big deal.
But not just that, also communicating with the people that are going to be like caring for that person too. Yeah. You need to have that communication line open as well. My mom likes to go to my grandma's house a lot because they like to sew. My mom is relearning how to sew because she forgot. And it's like sending your kid off to school who has medications or stuff like that. Like, I have to remind my grandma, okay, like if you see these triggers, like if she starts staring off into space, if she starts stuttering, if she just looks like she's just not in the conversation anymore, she's about to have a seizure, and you need to be prepared. You need to have medication ready on hand. You need to have someone hold her head because it'll just flop down. And that's the part that scares me the most because I'm like, she's going to snap her neck. Yeah. And so, having my grandma, learn how to take care of my mom now is like
someone who's taking care of her. Yeah. As a child. And here comes her grandchild to tell her what to do.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a whole different disability, Grandma. Like, this is not the same Gina that you remember. Yeah. And so, having that communication line open and letting them know, what the care looks like, what triggers look like, that is something that
should be discussed. Hard for your grandmother. I know for my mother alone, she came, when I got out of the hospital, she came and stayed with me for maybe 2 months. And she just, okay, come on. Everything was she just didn't understand, and sometimes try to force things to happen that I just wasn't able, and I was trying so hard to help her, but she hadn't come to terms. I don't think she has come to terms still with my disability, and forcing little things like, eating more food than I was able to, just because I was feeling so sick, and then I would just vomit, and then her feeling worse, and I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry, I'm trying to help you. Accept me. And it just was really hard for her. And we have to accept that. And even as a caregiver, I'm sure there's people that come around your mom, because I know people come around me and they just, when you carry it really well, unfortunately, we live in a society that's performance-based.
Yeah, for sure. And not every case is going to be the same. So you can't compare this to the last person that you were next to that had disabilities. You have to, it's a case-by-case thing. Everyone's...
And even more than that, it's a day-by-day thing. Because my mornings are usually pretty good. Yeah. And then noon, and I start going down, and by 3, I'm having a hard day.
It's time to take a break.
I can't get up. I can't be really super active. And a lot depends on how stimulated that day has been. So if I had an appointment that morning, or I had to do something, we have to understand you look great yesterday, and then what happened? What's wrong with you? And
you have good days and hard days.
Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just having a hard day, and my hard day might look different than your hard day. And me getting out of bed was a victory, and me washing my hair, we just talked about this earlier, was a victory. I could go a couple weeks, and I just have to wear something around my hair, and don't judge me and think I'm dirty. I cannot put water on my head. It just hurts too much, and we don't realize these little things are a big deal for people with disability. It's showers are hard for a lot of, they're hard for me. They're really hard to do, and they're exhausting. I could use a nap after a shower. And to have to get up and do things is hard. So it's just readjusting your life, and adapting to your challenges, but not just what challenges you have that day, but what that day might look like, and what the next day you have to prepare the day before, 2 days before. I know, usually. And talking about communication barriers, even sometimes with using really fancy words and trying to sound very smart. I can't even think of a smart long word right now, but they can be big barriers for people understanding with cognitive impairment, people who have cognitive issues of understanding. And say it plainly. Talk to me like I'm a 3rd grader. But I'm also not an idiot, so don't
speak to me like a 3rd grader.
Yeah. There's a really fine line, and I know I can't tell you how many places I've been where they just look at John. They won't even look at me. They won't even give me eye contact. I'm in a wheelchair, and they'll talk to John and address John. Oh, can she? He's like, she's right there. You can ask her. You can ask her if she wants a soda or something to drink at a restaurant. They won't even address me. And it's just these little things that we just have to brush off and not take personal. But, there's only so many things that you cannot take personal before eventually it starts to weigh on you, where you just don't want to go out too much. Right?
Agreed.
Another barrier. These physical barriers. Physical barriers are probably the hardest ones, because everywhere we go, there's a physical barrier. Everywhere we go, we have steps, we have curbs that block a person. It blocks you from even getting off the curb. We can't find a little ramp to get over the curb. I have to get out, and again, I'm very fortunate. God, thank you, Lord, that I'm able to get up and stand from out of the wheelchair, and then John will have to pick up the wheelchair and put it on top of a curb, and then get me and put me into the seat. But not everyone has that ability. And if you're alone, how the heck are you supposed to get up on the sidewalk of a curb? There's no way. If you're in a manual wheelchair, I have a manual wheelchair, and I had to learn how to pop a wheelie. Okay, I know. Now popping a wheelie sounds like it's like, I'm Evel Knievel here.
Tony Hawk.
The young folks don't know who Evel Knievel is. Us older folks know. But it's still hard without falling backwards to pop a wheelie and hold it and then pull your entire body weight up on top of a sidewalk. it's really hard and I'm not really great at it. I can pop a wheelie just to get over little bumps, but not a 4-inch
curbs.
And some of them are like 6 inches.
Yeah.
And they're just impossible. I had to get a mammography. Is that called mammogram?
Mammogram, yeah.
You know what? They're not accessible. You have to stand up. They don't have mammogram equipment that allows a woman, like they don't have, they couldn't bring it down. You had to get up. Why isn't that accessible?
Yeah. You'd think that that'd be like the first thing.
You think about some of the stuff, like every time I go for MRIs, I have several. I'm sure your mom's had a lot. I've had like 12 MRIs, and actually have another one scheduled Friday. And it's like 1,000 questions, and you have to think about the wheelchair and which, transferring over onto the table. And then, sometimes it's overstimulating because the noise is overwhelmingly loud, and I start shaking, and it's just really hard to stay still when you're having, I have ataxia a lot. But just basic equipment is not accessible.
That's weird.
And there's like doctor's offices. I know nobody wants to get on the scale at a doctor's office, but how are you going to get on a scale at a doctor's office if you're in a wheelchair?
That adds another 200 pounds. Yeah. I'm like,
how do you do
I'm
that?
declined for today.
Yeah, but how do you do that? How can you do that?
Yeah.
And then some of these wheelchairs don't even get into these rooms. A lot of these doctors' offices, like the, what do you call them? Like where they check you? Just the rooms that you go, come into room A, B, or whatever.
Like the triage room or whatever.
Some of them aren't even accessible. Like the doorway is not wide enough for some wheelchairs. Like, it's just part of, that goes right into some policy barriers, right? It's just basic lack of awareness. This is just basic lack of awareness. And then some laws just don't exist, or requirements that don't exist, because they're just basically unaware that these are important needs for people. And part of this goes back to like learning how to be an advocate, not only for myself, but as a caregiver, being the advocate for times where we're not able to speak up for ourselves. But we need people to advocate for those who are unable to advocate for themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a lot of laws that exist that should help qualify people, but there's sometimes that deny qualified individuals with disabilities to participate in federal funded programs, services, or benefits. Sometimes they're denying individuals with disabilities access to services or benefits or programs, and that we can't even participate as a result of the physical barriers. I'm so glad that the Special Olympics exists, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing, but there's so many other things that could exist, maybe creating adaptive things. And then there's some places, I know social barriers exist, and like a huge percentage, I think, so between the ages of like 18 and, 65 when you start working. I think we have our income, people with disabilities average an income of $15,000 compared to people without disabilities. So it's a difference of like, we have like 7.3% versus like 22% of the income. It's just that's
a huge gap.
Huge gap.
Yeah.
And then kids who go to school are less likely, if they have a disability, to graduate. That's 10% people with disability who graduate versus 22%. I mean, it's just a huge gap.
Yeah.
And we don't realize, what barriers they have. I don't remember my high school with any ramps. My high school didn't have ramps.
I don't think mine did either.
Just stairs.
Yeah.
We didn't have elevators in my high school.
And a lot of our classes were upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just a locker, the tall ones, how you can get, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't even open your locker.
Right.
Like, we don't even. And of course, when I was in high school, that stuff didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sad. And that goes into our transportation barriers, which is a huge deal, right? This is just unable to access basic transportation. We can't take the bus. So this is really big. And what I recommend for people, so I have my disability. I know with your mom, she would qualify. There's a lot of people, and it's up to you if you're able to. I cannot physically get to a bus. I cannot physically just get into any Uber or any taxi. So because I can't do the public transportation, I can't get onto a train because of the stimulation. I can't get to the train station by myself or to a bus station by myself or on by myself. I qualify for the special services. So we have Van-Tran, Suntran. Where I live now, we're right on the skirts of Tucson, so I have Dial-A-Ride. When I live in town, it's Van-Tran. So what you do is you put right now it's free. That's one great thing about COVID. It was free, and now it's free through the end of June, I think, or July. But you have to qualify. You send in paperwork. You can just go on to the transportation website. You can look up Van-Tran, Suntran, Dial-A-Ride, and just see the requirements. And I think you have to get like a doctor's note, and they can just sign it, and then you send it in to see if you qualify. And they come to my door. It's door-to-door service, so they pick me up here, and they take me if I have an appointment. Sometimes I'm able to work like 2 hours. I do 2-hour shifts on my job. I work 3 days a week. And only 1 day a week do I have to get a ride. I mean, I'm by myself. Two days a week I work. 1 day my husband works with me, and 1 day my friend Sharon, she takes me. 2 days a week, my friend, she takes me and she picks me up because I'm unable. I've had Van-Tran sometimes, and sometimes it's been bad and they didn't show up. But try it, Van-Tran or Dial-A-Ride. I think if you're a listener and you want to get to places and you need to get to doctor's appointments and you've exhausted any possible needs, or you don't have friends or family that can help you, go onto the website and see if you qualify for Van-Tran, and they can actually take you and pick you up. And it's an accessible van. They have ramps, and they take you, and the people assist you. They come to your door, and they call you, and they let you know when they're going to be there, and they just are fantastic. Highly recommend Van-Tran. And so as we're talking, Shay, if you think this is a lot of stuff, it is.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So it's a ton.
It's a ton of stuff to think about, and that is the problem. Because living with disability, it's challenging, but it's also really
expensive.
Really expensive.
Yeah.
So what are some of the expenses?
You got medications. You have doctor's appointments. You have tests. You have to have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, in-home assistance, adaptive devices, wheelchairs, such like that. Clothing, being able to just put something on and off. My mom likes a lot of like the over-the-head shirts, no buttons, stuff like that, because she can't deal with it. And then cost of living.
Yeah. Disability
pays are not much, and cost of living has definitely gone up, and I feel like disability is not going up.
It did go up a little bit but it's not horrendous. It's not like a huge difference. And SSI, I have Social Security insurance. So it's very expensive to be disabled, and people don't recognize how expensive it can be. And sadly, when you live in a world that is performance-based, if you work with what you have and you make it work to the best that you can make it work, people are completely unaware of it. But another problem is with performance-based, it's really hard to be able, without the performance-based, it's really hard to be able to get listened to. Like, we're so dismissed. People get dismissed. People in general, especially women of color, get dismissed. Now 100%. Add a disability to that. So there's me and your mom. We're both women of color. So add a disability to that on top of that. So you can talk about, if you want to, how hard it is to just get an appointment and to even get seen by a doctor. Yeah. I had to wait almost, 18 months before I saw my neurosurgeon because my other one retired. I had to wait 18 months. This is ridiculous. I was having problems. I was sent to my PCP. They're oblivious. They're not neurosurgeons. They have no
idea what's going on.
They wouldn't let me even see a neurologist because I'm not a neurology patient. I was a neurosurgeon patient. It was just circles and circles.
I think we had that same thing. Like, thank goodness her surgeon is still in office, but he was like, okay, you need to go to a neurologist. The first one we went to, literally we were in the room for like 5 minutes. He got a phone call, took the phone call in the middle of our appointment, came back and was like, okay, I think you're all set. We'll see you in 6 months. And I'm like, what did you do? You didn't talk to us. You said hi and then hold on a second. Like, what what did you do for us? He asked if we needed refills on medications. I told him yes. And he's like, well, I'll do that at your 6 month. I can't wait 6 months for some of these meds. Like, these are anti-seizing medications. I can't wait that long. So then we went to another neurologist. I had to wait 3 months to get into that office. He's a nurse practitioner, so he doesn't really know that much. So then he had to refer us out. That next office, we had to wait a year to get into. And then finally we got the appointment, and then she's like, well, we don't do second opinions. I'm like, ma'am, listen, okay? We went on a wild ride. This is not a second opinion. This is just an appointment. Our initial visit was nothing. And I had to fight. I called that office every single day, multiple times a day. Like, I bugged them. And even now when I go into the office, they don't like me because I had to be that person for my mom.
Just for advocating.
Yeah.
Advocating.
Because she was like, I'm over it. I'm done. I don't need a neurologist. And I'm like, sis, you do. And I'm going to figure it out. And she now sees a neurologist frequently. But again, we're going back to that advocating for your person. You have to be the person, because at some point she's going to get overwhelmed. They're going to get overwhelmed. They're going to be like, never mind. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't need it.
Yeah. Hence why it took me 18 months. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I called and I called and I called and I called every day. I called and I called for 2 weeks. I didn't know what to do. They didn't return one phone call. And I just left it. I just sat and I cried. I was overwhelmed and I just left it.
Yeah.
And it was just too much for me. So you're right.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal when you're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really big deal if you're in a lot of pain. So they give you the option, and the first option they give you is the same stuff they did when you're in a hospital. Big pharma. So if that's what works for you, if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. I highly recommend you look at all the side effects. I highly recommend if that's the best thing for you, because sometimes side effects are worse than the actual pain in general.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some over-the-counter things that we can take. There's people take Tylenol, and allergy medicine sometimes helps with certain things that trigger. I know the allergy medicine will help me with sometimes a little, like a percentage of the triggers that I have with ataxia, because I won't be sneezing or coughing, and it causes more stimulation kind of things. For me, the big deal has been that I really, truly, 100% believe that God has given us everything. He provided everything that we need to heal on earth. So the first thing I did was CBD. That's my first go-to was CBD, and I loved it. But it was really, really expensive. A small, quarter ounce bottle was like $80. It was costing me, like, with tax, like $90. And it would only last me like 15, 20 days max. And I did that for like a year, but it was so expensive, and I was taking more and more because it wasn't working as efficiently, and because I was taking a little bit more, I was getting more relaxed, and I want to be active, I want to be aware, I want to be awake, I want to participate in life and be excited to do it without having to OD on caffeine in order to do it, right? So I did wean myself off using that. I was doing Tylenol for a little bit, and then I switched over. I talked to Hernan Castro. He is the Desert Alchemist in Tucson. Highly, 100% recommend the Desert Alchemist. Check out his website. He's at the farmers markets. He does, if you're in Tucson, he does Udall on Friday. Saturday, he does Oro Valley. And Sunday, he does Rillito. So Desert Alchemist, and he has different types of mushrooms and herbs that help, and I take his pain mame, and that really, really helps me. It has natural things like turmeric and the wild lettuce to relax you. It's an anti-inflammatory. It has certain mushrooms in it. None of these are magic mushrooms. You're not going to get a trip. You're not going to be like, ooh, we're going on a nice trip. No, these are just all natural things that he has. God gave him the ability to understand how to use them, and he uses his chemistry background, and just go talk to him. There's so many. My husband takes a few for men's health. I take lion's mane. Highly recommend anyone who's got some sort of brain injury, and if you don't, just recommend Brain Boost and lion's mane in general, because it helps you with focus and with memory, and it's just proven. You can look up lion's mane. It's just proven. And I used lion's mane coffee that he sells, and I also use his lion's mane, and I used his pain mame. It's a huge deal. He has one for sleep. That's all natural things as well. You can use that for sleep. Sometimes when I'm having a really, really, really hard day, I do RSO. And for those who know, that RSO is magic. It is a blessing from God. RSO is Rick Simpson oil. Now, this is THC. So I think for RSO specifically, you do need the medical, what do they call it? The medical ID?
Medical marijuana card.
Medical marijuana card. You need the medical marijuana card, but if you're in pain, and some days on my very, very hard days, I have to take RSO in order to go to sleep and allow my body to heal. So look up RSO, go to YouTube. You're going to see the amazing benefits of using RSO. I mean, a dose of RSO is like the size of a grain of rice. So it's going to last you quite a bit, and you don't need a lot.
Yeah.
And then when I do take anything, whether it be the mushrooms, whether it be Tylenol, whether it just be I'm overwhelmed, I earth a lot. I earth as often as I can, every chance I get. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube, look up the Earthing movie, the benefits that we get from the vibration of the earth and just detoxing from this world. I mean, you immediately, the moment your hand touches or your feet touch the ground, the anti-inflammatory starts to work immediately from the benefits that we get.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit and kind of transition a little bit into travel. I've been really, really blessed and really fortunate to be part of the Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. If you don't know about them, and if you have any kind of brain injury, a concussion, brain tumor, malformation, I mean, Chiari, I mean, there's so many different types. Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. I'm on their support group. So once a month we get together on Zoom, and we get together and we just touch base with each other. And it's really important to feel and be seen without having to explain why you're crying or why you're laughing or why you're stuttering or why you're twitching. And you don't have to be embarrassed about it, because we're all in the same boat where we don't know why our body just is going through what it's going through. And you can go on and sign up. It's free to go on one of their support groups, Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. I was really fortunate. I was able to write 2 articles for them for the Brainwave. They have a vlog. If you go to their website and you can look up Brainwave under the BIAAZ is their acronym for Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona. And type in Brainwave, and you'll see over the holidays I did one for how to deal with the holidays with a brain injury, right? And then they just published one I think a couple days ago regarding traveling with a disability. You can go and check out that article, because I've had some experiences with them crushing my wheelchair, them losing and sending my wheelchair to a completely different state, and what that might look like learning to have to advocate for yourself is a big deal, right? And when you travel, we have to prepare. Just like you said, even just when you take your mom to your grandmother's house, you got to prepare, you got to plan, you got to have a backup to your plan.
Yeah.
You got to make sure they have medications. You have to make sure you have extra clothing just in case there's an accident. And maybe there's not an accident with our bowels or urinary tract, but maybe there's an accident where we shake and then we just spill things all over ourselves. So we always have to be prepared. And it can be really embarrassing. And
it is.
From my perspective, it's embarrassing. It's mortifying. I just want to go home and cry. And, I'm so grateful that my husband's so precious and he's so kind to me, and he's never made me feel embarrassed or ashamed about accidents. But accidents happen.
Yeah, they do, unfortunately. I know one of the things with my mom, like when she has her seizures, it's kind of like staring off into space. Like that's the only thing I can think of to like describe it. Like it literally just looks like she just is stuck in space somewhere. Like she's just staring off, and you can talk to her and everything, and she doesn't hear you at all. And like she'll get tears in her eyes and she'll like cry, but she just can't move. Like she's paralyzed like that. And I remember like I work overnights, and I work 2 jobs to try and supplement income for her to, and I was sleeping, and I could hear her in my sleep. She kept saying, "My leg is hot." And I woke up and she was like, "My leg is hot." And I'm like, "What do you mean your leg is hot? Like, do you need like a blanket or like because sometimes she gets confused, and it's usually cold in our house." And so I like went and got her a blanket, and I realized that she had just come out of a seizure. Like there was tears in her eyes, and she had a cup of hot coffee that she had just made, and as she had seized, it was spilling on her leg.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So when I finally understood your leg is hot because you're getting burned by coffee, like those are the types of things that like, you need to be prepared for. Because I never thought, oh, she's gonna spill coffee on herself, I need to bring an extra change of clothes. And now I'm like, yeah, we got to bring extra clothes because she could spill stuff on herself and not even know it.
Yeah. And there's just small accidents that happen every day
Yeah.
that most people are unaware of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I fall a lot, but don't tell John.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? He was here and he witnessed. He caught me twice when I fell, and he actually just like ran and he jumped off the table and he just grabbed my head. So my head never hit the ground.
Oh.
But I think yesterday I fell, and I'm really careful because I know I'm a falling risk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding onto walls. I'm always close to a wall or close to the sofa. I stay close to things intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you heard the last podcast where I was talking about like in physical therapy where they kept pushing me.
Yeah.
So they can teach me how to fall. And it was how traumatic that was for
Yeah.
me. And I still like cry when I think about it because it was so overwhelming. I physically couldn't even sit up straight. I couldn't stand up straight at the time. And they kept pushing me, and it was traumatic. But guess what? They taught me how to fall well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned how to fall into things
Mm-hmm.
and when to fall and how to protect my body and then how to get back up when I fall.
Yeah.
And I fell into the sofa and I fall into things a lot. I've face planted onto our bed more times than I can count. I have a septum, what do you call that? Broken septum, whatever.
Yeah,
because I face
deviated.
planted, deviated septum because I face planted so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just little things that if your loved one or your friend or your neighbor is saying things, it's possibly time to maybe listen,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're saying things, I'm really grateful that you and John don't dismiss because number one, we dismiss ourselves pretty well.
Yeah, you do.
We're really good at dismissing ourselves because we don't want to be a burden. We put so much on you already. I put so much on my precious husband. I don't even want to let him know if I'm having a really hard time, but because he's paying attention, he knows if I'm having a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the things I want to take away from this is, for me, is my perspective is stop dismissing yourself. Pay attention. I wasn't born disabled, and a lot of people weren't born disabled, but there's a lot of people that were.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, if your body is telling you something, pay attention to it and get it checked out. And I try to remind myself, don't worry about the cost of the test. I try and tell myself because I still think about that because 2 brain surgeries were not cheap.
Mm-mm.
Insurance barely covers any. It did not. And any devices, they don't even cover devices.
Yeah.
So you have to pay a huge amount. Just my wheelchair alone was a $2,000 copay.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the copay. It was extremely expensive. So from my perspective, if there's something going on as someone who's disabled, if you're unable to advocate for yourself, first of all, number one is advocate for yourself if you can. If you cannot, call a friend who's able to support you and help you. Say, hey, can you help me make this appointment? Can you help me get to this place? Can you come sit with me? Whatever those things that you need are, be vocal.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you need. And don't be embarrassed about asking for help.
Nope.
Don't be embarrassed.
And find yourself a strong voice too, because I feel like I'm that for my family. I'm very much a facilitator in everything. Like we have a family calendar, and I make sure that all her appointments are in there. And I'm like, hey, there are dates in there that don't have rides. Like somebody needs to jump in there and take mom here. So yeah, find yourself a loud advocator, I say, because the squeaky wheel definitely does get fixed, and you got to have that annoying person that'll just keep calling and keep pushing until something gets done.
And you know what? They're not the annoying person. They're the committed person.
Yeah.
You have to have someone you got to commit to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to find at least one person who's willing to commit. And if that, sometimes, unfortunately, we don't have family. We don't have kids. We don't have loved ones. Or we don't have neighbors. And
you lose a lot of people, too. I've noticed.
Yeah, because we feel, this is why we feel as disabled people that we're too much. Because people just it's too much for them.
Yeah, they stop talking to you. They stop checking in on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed.
It's lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we can have our own resolution as to why that is.
Mm-hmm.
but it does make us feel like we're just too much.
Yeah.
We're just too much because they don't want to have to come all the way over here. I can't meet them anywhere. I can't just get up and go, and can't support I can't support you the way that you're used to being supported. Doesn't mean I don't support you.
Right.
I physically cannot be there. I physically cannot show up because it puts me in a bad situation. So, learn how to advocate or find somebody who's willing to be committed to helping you.
Yes.
Live your best life because you deserve it. So I really appreciate you, Shay. I love you.
I love you.
I love my precious husband, John, who's just always willing to be beside me, but he's not the loud voice. That's usually me.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard too. But he will support me throughout all of it. And I'm glad that you're the loud voice. And I know you have told me, sister, you better let me know. I'll be the loud voice for you. And I just appreciate people like you because you give me more encouragement that I'm not a burden. Even though my husband will tell me, when other people tell me, it helps me remind myself that I'm not too much. Because people with disabilities can sure believe that we're just too much. So we're going to shrink.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that you did this podcast with me, Shay. I love you so much. Thank you for being here with me again on this other podcast. Go ahead and rate the podcast. Go ahead and listen. Be a subscriber. Share it with other people. Maybe you know someone with a disability. Maybe you know someone who's a caregiver. Maybe you know someone who's in the hospital who just had an accident and they don't even know. They haven't processed the fact that they might be disabled.
Yeah.
Go ahead and forward this podcast to them. Maybe it could be an encouragement.
Exactly. And John now has TikTok, so we can go follow him on TikTok at Bacon Bits Pod. And yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get him to start.
Yeah, we're gonna get him a little TikToker.
TikTok.
Doing a little TikTok dance.
We're gonna be talking soon. And you'll see us on there too. So we're so grateful. Thank you for listening to the Bacon Bits podcast.
We love you and peace. I don't know what he says.
Peace out.
I edit them every week, and
I have no idea.
No idea.
It's not like we're there every single time.
I know.
But yes, we love you all. And thank you for being with us.
All right, what's up, family? It's your boy John Bacon from the Bacon Bits Podcast. Thank you so much for your support, likes, and ratings. Please don't just listen, but rate me, follow me, and subscribe. This is an amazing way to offer free support. My beautiful queen and I have some books that we have written for your growth.
So the first book we have is a workbook, actually. It's called Healthy Relationships, and this is a workbook through the lens of faith. Because what makes a relationship healthy or unhealthy? So this workbook is designed, it's a 12-week, it's a biblically grounded course, and every week has a few different principles. So if some of our principles, some of our topics that we're covering are respect, cultivating security. And this is not just between a husband and wife. This is between parents, between siblings, between friends, between your bosses, employers. So it's really important, and everyone deserves a healthy relationship.
And also we have The Balanced Life by John Bacon. It covers how to be prosperous in your finances, relationships, your health, your mind, and your spirit. So you can pick that up on Amazon, also on audiobook. And we also have
The Unraveling, a creative healing journal, pinings, poems, prayers, and ponderings of my precarious life. I've had a testimony of I've had 2 brain tumors and 2 brain surgeries, and I'm super grateful, but I'm still grieving the process of healing. And this is part of the process. In this book, you have devotionals, you have prayers, and you have some ponderings. And in between these pages, there's a space for you to also be prompted to paint and to create your own, or maybe you want to write something in these books. This is part of your creative healing journal that we get to walk through together.
And you guys can just head over to Kingdom Servants First. Kingdom Servants, the number 1, st.com. And you can purchase all 3 of these books. Thank you for your support, your love, and your contributions. God bless.